The auction. Nobody watched. The market stank of sweat, smoke, and sadness. Metal cages lined the dirty road, filled with beings no one cared about anymore. Most were silent, too tired to scream, too broken to cry. In one corner, under a dim yellow light, sat a girl, an alien girl, very thin and very still. Her arms were tied with old wire. Her skin, once violet and glowing, now looked pale and bruised. Her long hair was tangled, her back full of scars. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just sat there, staring at the ground. The trader beside her shouted to the passing crowd, 10 credits, just 10 credits. Anyone wants her? Anyone? No, she still breathes. People laughed, some pointed. A group of alien boys threw a piece of bread at her and watched as it bounced off her shoulder. She didn't even flinch. No one noticed the human standing in the back, tall, quiet, arms crossed. His name was Rick Carter, a cargo pilot who came here to buy spare parts for his old ship. But now his eyes were fixed on the girl. She looked too young to be here, maybe 17 in human years, maybe older. But something about her face, it wasn't fear. It was emptiness. Rick asked the trader, "What's wrong with her?" The alien trader snorted. "Everything. She doesn't talk, doesn't cry, doesn't fight. Some say her brain broke. We bought her for cheap, tried to train her, but she's useless, just takes up space, 10 credits less than a meal." Rick looked again. Her legs were shaking slightly. She hadn't eaten, clearly, and yet she was still alive. That meant something. "What's her name?" Rick asked. "No idea," the trader said. "We call her Trash." Rick felt something in his chest tighten. He looked at the girl. Her lips moved slightly, just once. Not a word, just a breath. But it was enough. He reached into his pocket and dropped 10 credits on the trader's table. "I'll take her." The laughter stopped. "You serious?" the trader asked. Rick didn't answer. He walked to the cage and slowly bent down. "Can you walk?" The girl looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, her eyes blinked. Slowly, painfully, she stood up. Rick cut the wires from her arms. Her wrists were red and swollen. She didn't thank him. She didn't smile. But she followed. The path back to Rick's ship was quiet. No one stopped them. No one cared. Inside the ship, Rick showed her to a small room. It wasn't fancy, just a clean bed, a soft blanket, and a warm light. The girl stood in the doorway, not moving. "You can rest here," Rick said. "No one will hurt you." Still, she said nothing. He brought her a bowl of soup. She stared at it like it was poison. Then slowly, with shaking hands, she picked up the spoon. She took one bite, then another. Then she finished the bowl without saying a word. Rick watched her. "I'm not your master," he said quietly. I couldn't leave you there." She looked at him, confused. Her lips moved again. One word came out, almost like a breath. "Why?" Rick didn't answer right away. He sighed and sat down across from her. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago." That night, Rick stayed up fixing the ship's engine, but he kept thinking about the girl. He didn't know her name, he didn't know her story, but he knew what he saw in her eyes. Not fear, not hate, not even hope, just silence. But silence could be broken, and Rick Carter had made a choice. He wasn't going to leave her broken. Not now, not ever. A silent passenger. The spaceship hummed as it moved through space, cutting through darkness like a quiet arrow. Inside, everything was still, except the soft sound of footsteps on metal floors. The alien girl moved carefully. She never made a sound. She didn't explore. She didn't touch anything. She only sat in the corner of the small room Rick had given her, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Rick had placed a blanket, clothes, and a soft pillow there. She had used none of it. She slept sitting up, eyes half open, like she was always waiting for something bad to happen. He didn't push her. Every morning he left food near her door. Sometimes she ate. Sometimes she didn't. Days passed. He tried speaking to her gently. Do you like soup? Or should I try something else? No answer. I can teach you the ship controls if you want. Still, nothing. He even tried jokes. Bad ones. You know, the engine sounds like a sick cat. If I die fixing it, at least bury me with my tools. No reaction. But then, one day, Rick walked past the engine room and froze. She was there, sitting beside the wall staring at the controls, her head tilted, curious. He didn't speak. He just walked past and pretended not to see. That night, something changed. Rick was fixing wires near the sleeping quarters. Sparks flew. His hand slipped, cutting his palm. He hissed. Suddenly, she was there, silently standing behind him. She looked at his hand. He expected her to turn and run. Instead, she walked to the medkit, pulled out a cloth, and wrapped his hand with soft, careful fingers. Rick didn't move. Thank you, he said. She looked up. Her voice was barely a whisper, soft like wind. Kayla. He blinked. What? My name is Kayla. Then she turned and walked away. The next morning, she was already in the cockpit, sitting beside the second seat, waiting. Rick smiled. Co-pilot, huh? Kayla didn't speak, but she didn't leave either. He showed her the controls. This turns the thrusters. This button fires the brakes. And this, don't ever press this unless you want to eject into space. Her lips twitched. A half smile? Maybe. It disappeared too fast to know for sure. Over the next few days, Kayla sat with him during every jump. She watched, learned. She moved like a ghost, but not one running away anymore. One night, Rick found her looking out the window. Stars filled the sky. A small, abandoned moon spun below. Kayla whispered, "They used to tell me stars meant freedom." Rick leaned against the wall. And now? She turned to him. Her eyes were darker now. Not empty, just heavy. Now. I don't know what anything means. Rick nodded. That's okay. You're not alone anymore. She didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed just a little. Later, in the cargo bay, Rick saw her sitting beside an old metal panel. She was using her nails to scratch something into the surface. He looked closer. She was drawing a small shape, a bird with wings wide open. Is that from your world? He asked. Kyla looked down. My mother used to say, we were like the skybirds, beautiful, wild, and easy to break. Rick sat beside her. You're not broken anymore. She said nothing. But for the first time, she didn't move away when he sat close. That night, she took the blanket and pillow into her hands. She didn't sleep on the floor. She curled into the bed, covered herself, and closed her eyes. Rick watched from the hallway unseen. He smiled, one step at a time. The silent passenger was waking up, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't just a passenger anymore. A scarred name. The stars outside blinked like tiny eyes watching from far away. Inside the ship, Kayla stared at her reflection in a small piece of metal. The mirror was old, scratched, but clear enough to see her face. She touched the mark on her neck. A deep, ugly scar burned into her skin. The symbol of ownership. It was not just a scar, it was a sentence, a memory she could never erase. Rick entered the room, holding 2 mugs of hot broth. Brought you some, he said softly. Kayla took the cup with both hands, not meeting his eyes. She blew on the steam and whispered, You shouldn't have taken me. Rick raised an eyebrow. Why not? I am nothing. Rick leaned against the wall. Funny. You fixed the radar yesterday. That nothing saved us from drifting into a wormhole. Kayla looked down. She spoke again, slower now. I was sold when I was a child. My people lost a war, and I was taken. Sold again and again. Each time I was punished more. One owner. Broke my leg when I dropped a cup. One removed part of my ear because I didn't bow fast enough. My name was taken. My voice was taken. Only pain stayed. Rick didn't speak for a moment. Then he sat down beside her. You still have your name now, he said. Kayla. She looked at him with tired eyes. That's not my real name. He blinked. Then what is? She hesitated, then whispered, Serikai. The name sounded soft, almost like music. She hadn't said it in years. Saying it felt like letting go of a breath she didn't know she was holding. Rick smiled. Serikai, that's beautiful. Kayla touched the scar on her neck again. It was erased. They burned it away. Rick reached into his tool pouch and pulled out a small device. Then we erase this, he said, pointing at the mark. Not just hide it, remove it. Kayla's hands shook. That's dangerous. Rick nodded. I know, but I'm a stubborn human. She gave the smallest laugh. The sound surprised even her. That night, Kayla sat on the med table while Rick gently cleaned the skin around the scar. He used a precision laser, not strong enough to harm, just enough to fade. She didn't flinch. Not once. When it was done, the mark was still there. But lighter. Faded. Weaker. Like her past. She ran her fingers over it and whispered, Thank you. The next morning, Kayla came to the cockpit wearing a scarf, one she made from a piece of fabric in the supply room. She tied it proudly around her neck. Rick smiled when he saw her. Ready to fly, Serikai? She looked at him, then nodded. They took off, heading toward a small trade moon. They needed fuel, food, and maybe a bit of peace. As they flew, Rick asked, What did Serikai mean on your world? Kayla stared out the window. It means one who endures. Rick chuckled. Fitting. Kayla turned to him. You gave me safety. I want to give you something too. He looked surprised. Like what? She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small carved stone. It was shaped like a starbird, her mother's symbol. This was hidden in my clothes when I was first taken, she said. I kept it all this time. Now, it's yours. Rick took it, holding it gently. I'll keep it safe. Kayla smiled softly. It wasn't just a gift. It was trust. Later, while they were resting in orbit above the moon, a ship approached. It sent no signal, no ID. Kayla looked at the radar, her eyes narrowed. I know that ship, she whispered. That's one of my old owners. Rick stood. Then we're not answering. But Kayla stood too. No, I want to face them. She was no longer the silent girl in a cage. She was Serikai. And this time, she had someone standing beside her. The attack and space warning lights flashed red. The radar beeped louder now. The unknown ship was getting closer. Kayla's hands gripped the console. Her eyes stared at the screen, frozen but not with fear, with fire. That ship belongs to Lord Varn, she said, voice low. He was the one who gave me the worst scars. He made me serve him like I wasn't alive. Rick's jaw tightened. We can run. We can jump now. Kayla shook her head. If we run, he'll find someone else, someone like me, and they won't have you. Outside, the enemy ship locked onto them. Its lights blinked with warning. A message came through, voice cold and sharp. Return the property, human. You have something that does not belong to you. Rick leaned forward, pressing the comm button. She's not your property, and she's not going anywhere. There was silence. Then came the reply. You've made a mistake. The enemy ship fired. A blast rocked Rick's vessel sideways. Alarms blared. Kayla fell, but Rick caught her arm and pulled her up. Get to the turret, he shouted. Kayla blinked. You're smart. You've watched. Now fight. Kayla ran down the narrow corridor. Her feet pounded the metal floor. In the back of her mind, Lord Varn's voice echoed, You're weak. You obey or you die. She reached the turret control room, sat in the chair and gripped the joysticks. This time she wouldn't obey. Rick struggled to keep the ship steady. Sparks flew from the ceiling. The shields were holding, but barely. Kayla, he shouted, through the comm. I need those cannons up now. I'm trying, she called back. The turret systems blinked to life. Kayla aimed. The enemy ship circled around. It was bigger, stronger, but slow. She breathed deeply, then fired. Boom. A direct hit to one of the wings. Smoke burst into space. Rick grinned. Nice shot. But the battle wasn't over. 2 enemy drones launched from the larger ship, heading straight toward them. Rick swerved hard, pushing the engines. Kayla tracked the drones, her fingers flying across the controls. She hit one, then the other. One exploded. The second slammed into their ship just outside the engine room. The lights flickered. Damage in the engine sector, Rick shouted. I'm going to check it. Rick opened the hatch to the engine. Room fire licked the ceiling. A fuel pipe hissed. He grabbed a fire foam gun and began spraying. The heat was intense. His vision blurred. His breathing grew heavy. Suddenly, the ceiling cracked and a sharp beam fell straight toward him. Kayla saw it on the screen. Rick. No answer. She ran. Down the hallway, past the cargo, into the engine room. She found him under the beam, pinned. His arm was bleeding badly. His face was pale. I'm fine, he groaned. Get out of here. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. No, I won't leave you. Using all her strength, she lifted the beam just enough for Rick to pull himself. Out he gasped in pain, but he smiled. You came for me. Kayla pressed a cloth to his bleeding arm. You came for me first. Outside, the enemy ship was spinning, trying to recover from the turret damage. Kayla looked at Rick. Can you fly? He grunted. Barely. She nodded. Then I'll fly. Us out. She took the pilot seat. Her hands moved quickly across the controls. She remembered everything Rick had taught her. Throttle. Directional boost. Steady turn. Light jump. The ship spun under her command like it was part of her. She aimed at a distant asteroid field and pressed the jump button. In seconds, they vanished from enemy radar. Silence returned. Only the soft hum of space filled the air. Kayla exhaled. Her heart was still pounding. Rick sat in the co-pilot seat, injured but smiling. I told you you're not broken. Kayla looked ahead, eyes glowing softly. I'm not, she whispered. Not anymore. Healing both wounds. The ship drifted quietly through deep space. Its hull was scratched, engines barely holding together, and lights flickered like a tired heartbeat. But inside there was peace. Peace that came after surviving something deadly. Kayla sat by Rick's bedside. His arm was wrapped, his forehead bandaged. He looked weak but not broken, just like she once had. She dipped a cloth in warm water and gently wiped the sweat from his brow. He stirred slightly, his voice rough. You didn't leave me behind. Kayla smiled faintly. You taught me not to. Rick opened one eye. Remind me. Did I teach you how to fly that ship like a pro? She nodded. You did. But I think I was already good at surviving. You just showed me how to fight back. Over the next few days, Rick slowly healed. Kayla brought him food, helped change his dressings, and even cleaned the grease from his tools. But what surprised Rick the most was how she began to hum soft melodies, quiet songs from a world long gone. One day, he asked her, What's that, song? Kayla looked at the floor, shy. A lullaby. My mother used to sing it. It was about skybirds. Rick smiled. You sing like someone who still believes in the sky. Kayla touched the scarf around her neck. I believe in something now. You. Later, Kayla returned to the cockpit. She studied the star maps, checked the navigation logs, and updated the ship's health systems. She worked with purpose. When Rick limped in, leaning on the wall, she looked up. You should rest, she said. I should, he replied. But I also wanted to see the person who saved my life flying my ship. Kayla shrugged. I like it up here. Rick sat beside her slowly. You don't have to keep doing this. You've earned your freedom. If you want to leave, I'll drop you off at the next safe colony. No cages, no chains, just choice. Kayla looked at him long and hard. Then she said, What if I don't want to leave? He blinked. You want to stay? Kayla nodded. This ship, it's not just a ship anymore. It's my first home. And you didn't see me as something broken. You saw me. Rick's voice grew soft. You were never broken. Just buried under pain. Kayla reached into her pocket and pulled out a small metal pin. It was dull, shaped like an old star emblem. She handed it to Rick. What's this? He asked. My mother's flight crest, she said. It was hidden in my clothes all these years. I kept it close even when I was sold again and again. But now, I want you to have it. Rick held it like it was made of gold. I can't take this. You can, she said. You gave me my name back. My freedom. My sky. That crest means you're part of my story now. That night, Kayla didn't sleep in the corner like before. She curled into her bed. Blanket pulled tight, eyes closed peacefully, and Rick slept. Without pain for the first time since the attack, their ship floated through space not as a prison or an escape route, but as a home. Two survivors, two wounded souls learning to heal. Together. The past returns. The stars outside looked calm, peaceful, like nothing bad had ever happened in the galaxy. But inside the ship, Kayla couldn't sleep. Something didn't feel right. She sat in the dark, listening to the ship's hum. Her fingers traced the edge of her scarf, the one she wore to hide the scar. Even though Rick had faded the mark, she still felt it, like a shadow behind her neck. Then the ship's comms crackled. Rick's voice came through, calm but firm. Kayla, we're being followed. Kayla rushed to the cockpit. Rick pointed to the radar. A sleek, sharp-looking ship hovered far behind them, not attacking, not answering hails, just watching. Kayla stared at it, her heart sinking. That design, it belongs to the Crimson Court, one of Lord Varn's allies. Rick's hands gripped the controls. They found us again. Kayla shook her head. No, they're not here to shoot us. Not yet. They're here to remind me that I'm still theirs, in their minds. Rick looked at her. You're not theirs. You're free. But they don't accept that, she whispered. They landed on a small desert moon to refuel. It had an open market, a repair dock, and a long line of aliens passing through. Rick left to handle trade deals while Kayla stayed near the ship. She walked slowly, scanning the shops. That's when she saw him, a tall alien in silver robes. His eyes locked onto hers. Kayla froze. He smiled and walked straight toward her. She turned and ran. Back into the ship. Locked the door. Her hands shook as she backed away from the entrance. Her breathing was fast, panicked. Her legs felt weak. Moments later, Rick burst in. I saw him too, he said. He tried to talk to me. I claim to be your legal owner. Kayla's voice cracked. He's one of the couriers. They send them ahead to collect the runaways. If they take me, I'll disappear again. Rick's eyes burned with anger. Let them try. They didn't wait long. That evening, 3 well-dressed aliens stood outside the ship. One held a tablet showing false documents with her old branding mark. The other 2 carried stun weapons. The leader raised his voice. Under Galactic Code 73Z, we demand the return of the escaped asset. Female, marked, registered under the Crimson Court. Rick stood at the ship's door, blocking the entrance. She's not an asset. She's a person. She was sold. Legally, the alien said coldly. She was abused illegally, Rick snapped. I have her testimony, med scans, and witness logs. The alien narrowed his eyes. You're interfering with court property, human. Rick smiled. You'll have to go through me. Suddenly, the door opened behind him and Kayla stepped out. Her scarf was gone. The faded scar was visible. But so was the fire in her eyes. I will speak, she said loudly. The aliens turned, surprised. I am Sarakai of Veyron, not property, not trash. I was stolen, broken, and sold by monsters who will never own me again. The leader hissed. You have no voice in court. Then listen to this. she shouted. She pressed a button on a small recorder. A voice played, Lord Varn himself mocking her pain in an old transmission that Rick had found and saved from a wrecked ship's memory chip. The aliens paled. You were warned about collecting marked females without trials, Rick said, crossing his arms. Kayla stepped forward. If you want to take me, do it in front of witnesses with my voice playing across every public channel. A crowd had begun to gather. Locals, traders. A few already had their recorders running. The leader cursed, under his breath. This isn't over. He turned and stormed off. Kyla stood still, shoulders straight. She had just faced the past, and made it walk away. Back inside the ship, Kyla sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking again, but her voice was steady. I didn't think I could do that. Rick handed her a cup of water. You did more than that, you just burned the chains they left behind. She looked up at him. They'll come back. Rick nodded. Then we'll stand again, together. Kayla smiled for real, I'm small but bright, I'm not running anymore. A new name, a new life. The ship floated gently above a green world, peaceful, untouched, and far from any trade routes or slave markets. Kayla stood at the window of the cockpit, watching the sunrise paint the trees below in golden light. For the first time in her life, she saw a place that didn't look like a cage. Just sky. Just freedom. Rick entered behind her, carrying a warm drink. First sunrise on Meriden 9, he said, handing her the cup. Beautiful, right? Kyla nodded, her voice soft. It's quiet. It doesn't feel like anything bad ever happened here. Rick leaned on the wall. That's why I brought us here. No court agents, no slavers, just people who mind their own business. She turned to him, eyes full of gratitude. And what will you do here? Rick smiled. What I always do. Fix things. Except now. I think I'll fix old farm bots instead of plasma engines. Kayla chuckled. And me? That depends, he said. What do you want? Kayla went silent, her hands wrapped around the warm cup. I've been property, a servant, a ghost. But now I want to be something else. Rick tilted his head. Like what? She smiled. Real. Later that day, they walked through the village together. Meriden 9 had no grand cities, no tech towers, just simple homes, honest work, and kind smiles. Locals looked at them with curiosity, not fear. No one asked where Kyla came from. No one pointed at her neck. A young alien girl with 4 arms handed Kayla a flower. You're pretty, she said. Are you a pilot? Kayla blinked. Rick grinned. Yes, she is. Back at the ship, Kayla opened a small box. Inside was the starbird carving she had once given Rick. She had taken it back only to add something. A second bird, smaller, beside the first. She gave it to him again. Rick looked down at it, surprised. You added to it? Kayla nodded. Because the first bird isn't alone anymore. Rick swallowed hard. You know, you never told me if you wanted to keep the name Sarakai. Kayla looked out the window. I want to keep it, she said, but not because of what it used to mean. Not one who endures. She turned to him, her eyes shining. Now it means one who chooses. That evening, Rick made a small fire outside the ship. Kayla sat beside him, wearing her scarf not to hide, but because she liked the color. They ate simple food and watched the stars together. Rick looked at her. I have one more question. Kayla raised an eyebrow. What would you say if I asked you to stay with me? Not as a passenger, not as a rescue, but as a partner. Kayla looked into the flames, her voice was steady. I would say, I already chose that the day I stood between you and those men. Rick smiled. I figured. Sometime later, Rick added a nameplate to the side of the ship, a small silver tag that read, Sarikai. Kayla ran her fingers over it, slowly. That's my name. He nodded. And your ship. She looked at him, eyes soft. Our ship. The stars above still held dangers. The galaxy was far from perfect. But for two people once scarred by the past, the future had finally begun. Together. The end.